Hi girls, I hope you're all well and taking care of yourselves, and I also hope that you're ready to start task M1 of Unit 21. Okay, so we have done P1, P2 and P3, and they're all P tasks, so past tasks, and we're now coming into the kind of merit tasks that is a bit trickier. So before we start, I would like you to think about what the term multiplier effect refers to. I know we've done it before, and that is kind of why I'd like you to have a look and think about what this term refers to. So if you could please now stop the video for a minute, interrupt it for a minute, and write in your books, in your notes, what exactly this term refers to, whatever you remember from this term. Please stop the video, thank you. Right, I'm going to assume that you did that, but yeah, I'm not sure that you did, but I'm going to assume that you did. And I have given you here a little definition of what the term multiplier effect refers to. So the multiplier effect is a mechanism that occurs when an initial change in government spending leads to a ripple effect, which is another term for saying chain of events, to the entire economy, resulting in higher total spending. This total amount of spending depends on how much consumers in the economy spend on their disposable income. I mean, I didn't fit there, but disposable income is a term. Okay, so remember that the word disposable income refers to the income available for individuals once they have deducted from their salary things like taxes, fixed costs like rents or bills, energy bills, and so on. Okay, so what does this definition really mean? I mean, we looked at this a while ago, and I don't know if you remember, I explained that basically, if the government spends money on services such as education sector and the health sector, the money that they spend on these two sectors becomes somebody's income. Okay, so teachers, nurses, doctors, they all get an income from the government. Now, these individuals, okay, that receive this money from the government as their income, save a portion of this money and spend the rest on services such as, and on other let's say, goods such as maybe airline companies. So they spend money on flights. They might spend money on things like going to the pub, going to the cinema, leisure activities, and so on. And of course, the money that they spend on these services becomes someone else's income. So if teachers spend money on going to the pub, then the workers in that pub receive an income, and those workers in that pub then decide to save a portion of that income and spend more on other services, like for instance going to Waitrose or going to Tesco and buying from those supermarkets the food that they need for and drink that they need to run their pub, and so on. Okay, so this keeps happening over and over again, and that is why economists have named this effect the multiplier effect. Okay, so an initial change in government spending leads to a chain of events to the entire economy, and it leads to a bigger portion of total spending. Okay, now I hope that was clear, and I hope that you remembered those terms. So we have looked at task P1, P2, and now we're going to have a look at, well, after P3, M1, okay? The good thing about doing M1 is that although it is harder because it's a merit task, the content that we've learnt in P3 is going to be the same that we're going to reuse to write task M1, okay? So for task M1, what we need to do is we need to analyse the positive and the negative effects of government spending on the business, which is Tesco, okay? In the previous task, we were supposed to just identify the impact of government spending on Tesco. Here we've got to actually think about what the good aspects and the negative aspects are of this spending on Tesco, okay? And then we're going to move on to D1 task, but for now, let's just concentrate on these positive and negative effects, and I will explain what we're going to do for D1 in another moment, okay? So I've given you here the learning outcomes for task M1, which are the exact same as task P1, okay? So government spending, the budget, the welfare expenditure, public service expenditure, things like education, health, public security, infrastructure spending, so spending on things like road building, bridge building, airports, plant building, and so on, foreign aid, subsidies, and the public sector borrowing, which we're not actually going to have a look at that much, I don't think, for this task here. But then, yeah, it would be great if you could have another paragraph on the multiplier effect and what the benefits and the downfalls are to our business, which is Tesco. Now, what is the government spending? So remember that we've looked at this before. So government expenditure refers to the money spent by the government on the acquisition of services such as the education service, the health service, the public security service, and many more. Okay, so here is that pie chart that we had a look at a few weeks ago, and we can see that the UK mainly spends money from taxes on welfare. So the public expenditure from the UK is mainly spent on welfare. The healthcare, on the other hand, is the second biggest category that they spend money on. The UK has been criticised, especially recently. You probably know about this, for having spent too little on health. So let's say it's quite interesting to know actually what other countries think about the UK in this respect. So other European countries argue that the UK doesn't spend enough, but then other countries such as Italy has a superb healthcare because the government spends so much money on the healthcare system, but then we don't have that much money that we spend on things like the welfare, so things like benefits and so on. So it's difficult to know exactly what you should be spending money on if you are the government, but it's interesting to know that every country has a different expenditure on every category. I just thought you'd be interested in that. Okay, so key terms to remember: the budget, which we had a look at. The government budget is that document prepared by the government every year, and it presents the anticipated revenues and proposed spending for the coming financial year. So of course, before the government knows how much they're going to spend money on, they need to know exactly what the revenue is. Okay, so how much money they have or they will get from that year. Now, welfare spending relates to the government expenditure on a variety of services, all these services here, such as care for the unwell, the elderly, the disabled, parentless children, and so on. Foreign aid is help that is given by a wealthier country to a poor one, and it is generally in the form of food, medicines, and money. Subsidies are government incentives to fund a particular project, company, or sector. Remember when we looked at, I've given you here one example, but I think that you'll remember it better if you look at this picture here. So this is the government giving money to windmill companies, okay, because they are ecological, they are better for the environment and so on, and the government decides to fund projects made by these kind of companies there because they are environmentally friendly, and that will give them a chance to kind of do quite well. Okay, and on the other hand, another example that I've given you here is when the government gives money to farmers to plant specific crops and stimulate that sector of the economy. Now, how can we apply these concepts here to our company, which is Tesco? So remember, the task M1 asks us to analyse the positive and the negative effects of government spending on Tesco, okay, on our selected business. Now, how exactly does increasing public expenditure affect our company? So, government spending must be funded, of course, by someone, okay? So the people that are going to fund these expenditures are going to be taxpayers, so individuals that earn a specific amount of money every year. I think it's about £10,000 a year. I know in Italy it's around €10,000 per year. So if you make more than €10,000 per year in Italy, then you must pay tax. Okay, if you make less, then you're eligible for not spending. So for instance, you guys have a job at the moment, but you don't get that much money every year, so you don't have to pay tax, if that makes sense. But on the other hand, if you were to do a job in which you got more money, then you probably, if you got to that amount of money, you would have to spend on tax as well, contribute to society. Okay, so let me have a look at, so we said that if the government is spending more money on things like the education sector, the health sector, and the public security sector, then this means that taxpayers are going to have to pay a little bit more tax. Okay, so this is what the implication is. If the government is thinking of increasing public expenditure, it is likely that our taxes may go up a little bit. Okay, now, so as I said, the level of government spending has many direct and indirect effects on businesses. Okay, of course, higher taxes, as I said, mean reduced disposable incomes. Lower disposable incomes can lead to a lower propensity to spend due to a lower amount of purchasing power by consumers. Okay, and this will definitely lead to lower consumer spending, which will probably lead to, which will have, let's say, big implication for Tesco's, because if spending goes down, then this might mean that people have less disposable income and therefore may choose to spend less on luxury goods like champagne, and I think that Tesco sells champagne, I'm pretty sure it does, and other, let's say, luxury goods like caviar and so on, and also on more expensive brands like Kellogg's, rather than spending money on Tesco brand goods. But they will also spend more money, but they will also, spend the exact same amount of money on staple foods. So it's difficult to determine actually whether the profits will go up or down, because if people are buying the same staple foods and maybe buying more Tesco brand goods, then that might offset the losses. But in general, we think that if the taxes go up, then this means that sales may decrease or profits may decrease for Tesco. Okay. On the other hand, if the education system and the healthcare system is better in a country, then this is potentially very good for a company such as Tesco, because if Tesco can hire more educated people, then this means that they're going to probably be able to contribute more to the company on things like managing the company. They're going to maybe be better at, so the company, Tesco, might be able to hire more able workers that are good at doing things like advertising the company and making strategic decisions for the company and so on. On the other hand, healthcare may also be a good thing improved healthcare may be a good thing for Tesco, because do you remember that example that we made about the workers? So if workers are happier, okay, so if their mental health is taken care of by the government, then by public services that funded by the government, then people at work might be happier, and if they're happier at work, then this might mean that they might improve their customer services, and if that happens, then customers at Tesco might start spreading a positive word of mouth advertising, and this might lead to higher popularity from Tesco and so on. So you can say that the con, okay, of increasing public expenditure would be higher taxes, and you explain what the kind of chain of reasoning behind that is. But on the other hand, the positive thing about this is that education and healthcare may be improved, and this might be good for Tesco in the ways that you can think of. Okay, so the ones that I've explained just now, but you might be able to think of other ways that this might affect Tesco positively. Increasing infrastructure spending. How might this impact Tesco positively? So I said here, I mean, this is just an example. You can obviously do it differently. It doesn't have to be the way that I'm doing it. But I've said here that the good thing about this, about increasing infrastructure spending, is that there may be a huge multiplier effect when you increase government spending on infrastructure. For an example, if we have a power plant or a bridge or a motorway being built near a Tesco Express or something, then what happens is that these industries, so the industries that are developing the power plant, bridge or motorway, would start hiring new workers for the project. And this increase in employment in the power plant area or the bridge area would mean that people have an income, so these workers have an income, and they can spend their disposable income on goods and services, such as things like going for lunch. Okay, so they might go for lunch nearby, and they might see a Tesco. Tesco's quite good at doing their little meal deals, and they might think, actually, rather than going to a cheap supermarket like Asda, I might be able to afford going to Tesco for lunch because I'm employed, I'm having a job, and so on. Okay. The cons of this, on the other hand, are that this kind of infrastructure spending might mean higher corporate tax, and therefore, if the higher corporate tax is higher, profits might be lower, and Tesco might be thinking of